You ever walk away from a conversation and think, ugh, why did I say it like that? Or worse, why didn't I say anything at all? Maybe you had the perfect thought in your head, something clever or insightful, but by the time you tried to speak it, it came out all wrong, like your brain and your mouth were speaking two completely different languages. That awkward pause, the scramble for the right word, the way someone glances at their phone mid-sentence because you're just not getting there fast enough. Yeah, we've all been there. And that frustrating gap between what you feel and what you're able to express. That's what being inarticulate feels like. It's not just annoying, it's lonely. Because when you can't articulate, people don't really know you, not the real you. Growing up, I was that kid who knew the answer, but never raised their hand. Not because I didn't care or didn't know it, but because I was terrified I'd say it weird, like my tongue would trip or my words would fall flat. And even later, as an adult, I've had moments, on dates and job interviews, even casual conversations, where I walked away thinking, if only I could have said that better, they would have understood me. It's not just about sounding smart, it's about being seen. When we can't express ourselves clearly, we risk being misunderstood. We risk missing out on connection, on opportunity, on life. But here's the thing. Being articulate is not something you're either born with or not. It's a skill. And like any skill, playing piano, learning to cook, doing a perfect squat at the gym, it can be learned, rewired, strengthened. So if you've ever felt invisible in a conversation, or like your thoughts are trapped inside your head while your mouth fumbles to keep up, this one's for you. Let's talk about what it really means to be articulate, not just to speak fluently, but to speak with impact, with clarity, with soul. Chapter 1. Why we struggle to speak our minds. Let's start here. We live in a world where being articulate is power. Think about it. People who speak well are seen as more intelligent, more trustworthy, more confident, even when what they're saying is kind of nonsense. We're wired to equate clear expression with credibility. That's why it feels so defeating when our words don't come out the way we imagined. When we know we're smart, we feel something deeply, but what actually comes out of our mouths sounds like we're guessing or fumbling through it. And the worst part, that moment of self-doubt creeps in. The voice that says, "You sounded stupid," or "See, this is why you should just keep quiet." That voice is a liar, but it's convincing, especially when you've been misunderstood before. Maybe someone interrupted you. Maybe they laughed when you weren't trying to be funny, or maybe they just looked confused. And that tiny sting of embarrassment turns into a habit, a pattern of not speaking up. A lot of us were never really taught how to communicate well. Sure, we learned grammar and essay writing in school, but no one taught us how to talk, how to structure thoughts in real time, how to be concise without sounding robotic, how to pause without losing your place, how to use your voice like a highlighter, bolding certain words, adding color and rhythm to your message. And there's another layer, performance anxiety. You know that feeling when your heart starts racing before you speak? Your hands go cold, your throat tightens, and suddenly, even simple words feel like tongue twisters. That's your nervous system going into fight or flight. Your brain thinks you're in danger, even if all you're doing is pitching an idea at a meeting or asking a question in class. And when that happens, your working memory, the part of your brain responsible for holding and organizing information, gets hijacked. So yeah, it's not that you're not smart. It's that your brain is busy trying to keep you from dying instead of helping you form perfect sentences. Here's something wild. Research shows that our ability to articulate depends less on how much we know and more on how safe we feel. That's why you might have no problem explaining your thoughts to a friend on the couch, but totally freeze up during a job interview. Context matters. So if you blamed yourself for not being good with words, pause. You're not broken. You're just human. Being articulate isn't about having a massive vocabulary or sounding like a TED speaker every time you open your mouth. It's about being authentic and intentional with your words. It's about aligning what you feel, what you think, and what you say, so you can be understood, truly understood. And trust me, when you start speaking like that, when people start getting you without you having to over-explain, When your words start landing the way you meant them to, it feels like you're finally stepping into your power. That's just the beginning. In the next chapter, we're going deeper into the invisible habits that are silently sabotaging your ability to express yourself. You don't want to miss it. Chapter 2. The hidden habits that mute your voice. So let's get real. You want to be more articulate, but you keep hitting this invisible wall. You try to speak up in a meeting, your brain blanks. Someone asks your opinion, and suddenly your thoughts feel like a cluttered desktop with too many tabs open. It's not that you don't have the words, it's that you can't grab them fast enough. And there are hidden habits making it worse. One of the biggest culprits? Overthinking. Yup, classic. You're rehearsing the sentence before you say it, trying to make it perfect. But in the process, you're hesitating. And when you hesitate, people either cut you off or tune out. It's like trying to sculpt your words into art before you speak them. But conversations aren't sculptures. They're jazz. They're messy, flowing, real-time improv. And the people who sound confident, they're not perfect. They're just willing to be imperfect out loud. Then there's filler words, we all use them. They're not evil, but when they flood your sentences, they dilute your message. Why do we rely on them so much? Because we're uncomfortable with silence. We think pausing means we've lost our place, or worse, that we don't know what we're talking about. But the truth is, silence is power. A pause gives your brain time to catch up. It gives your listener time to absorb, and it makes you sound more in control, like you're not rushing because what you're saying matters. Another trap? Apologizing for speaking. You might not realize you're doing it, but phrases like, "this might sound stupid, but," or "I don't know if this makes sense," are tiny disclaimers that train people not to take you seriously. They're self-sabotaging scripts, like you're giving your words a warning label before they even land. And the worst part? People usually mirror your energy. If you sound unsure, they'll feel unsure. But if you own your sentence, even if it's imperfect, they'll lean in. Also, let's talk about speed. Rushing through your thoughts because you're afraid of taking up space. That's a silent habit a lot of us picked up in school or family dynamics. Maybe you were told to keep it short or don't talk too much. So now you speak like you're trying to finish before someone interrupts, but when you talk too fast, you don't sound smart. You sound anxious. Speed doesn't equal fluency. Pacing equals power. Here's the honest truth. Your voice is shaped not just by what you say, but by how you say it, and by the habits you've unknowingly practiced for years. But the good news, habits can be unlearned, and once you become aware of them, you can start choosing something different, something stronger. Because being articulate isn't about memorizing big words or performing, it's about slowing down, owning your voice, and speaking with presence, even if your hands are a little sweaty. Chapter 3. Speak with structure, not just words. Okay, so now that we've cleared out the clutter, let's talk about building real articulation. And here's the secret sauce. Clarity isn't magic, it's structure. Think about your favorite speakers. They don't just ramble, they guide. You can follow their thought like a clear walking path. That's because they've trained themselves to think and speak in chunks. They introduce an idea, they expand on it, and then they close it out, even in casual conversation. And you can do that too. Let's say someone asks you, "What's your take on remote work?" You don't have to launch into a TED Talk, but you can use structure to sound clear and confident. Something like, "I think remote work has huge upsides, especially for productivity and flexibility, but it can also create isolation if you don't balance it. Personally, I think hybrid models offer the best of both worlds." Boom. Intro, insight, personal take. Easy. Another example, you're asked to explain a project idea. Start with what it is, then why it matters, then how you'll make it happen. That simple 3-step structure keeps people engaged and helps you think clearly, even mid-sentence. And listen, it's not about being perfect. It's about being organized. Because the clearer your thought, the clearer your speech. When your ideas are tangled, your words come out tangled. But when you pause for even 2 seconds to mentally outline your thought, you're giving yourself the power to deliver it with purpose. Think of it like this. Being articulate is less about vocabulary and more about navigation. You're helping the listener travel from point A to point B. And if you don't know the route, they're not going to follow. But if you sound like, hey, I got you, here's the idea, here's why it matters, here's what I think, people relax, they trust you. And bonus, this works everywhere. At dinner with friends, in a job interview, on a podcast, in a voice note. The more you practice thinking in structured mini stories or frameworks, the more naturally articulate you become. Let's be honest, most of us ramble because we're figuring it out as we speak. That's okay, but a 1-second pause to mentally organize your idea can make the difference between sounding scattered and sounding solid. You don't need to memorize anything. You just need to slow down, think in chunks, and trust that your mind knows what it's doing. Chapter 4. The Power of Emotionally Driven Language. Now, here's where the magic really happens. You want to be more than articulate. You want to be magnetic. You want your words to land not just in people's heads, but in their hearts. And for that, you need emotion. Because the truth is, nobody remembers data. They remember feeling. Think about it. How many times has someone told you something super factual, but it just didn't stick? But a story about heartbreak, or triumph, or embarrassment, you remember it forever. When you speak from emotion, you become human. And being human is what makes you heard. It makes people lean in. It makes your words matter. So don't be afraid to say things like, I felt totally stuck, or I was genuinely excited, or that moment honestly crushed me. It's not weakness, it's connection. And here's something to keep in mind. People aren't just listening to your words. They're listening to your tone, your pauses, your eyes, your vibe. Emotion fills the gaps where words fall short. So if you want to be more articulate, stop focusing on sounding smart and start focusing on being real. Even a simple story about getting ghosted after a job interview or having your voice shake during a big speech can be a powerful tool if it's told with vulnerability. The goal isn't to impress, it's to express. Now, this doesn't mean cry during every conversation. It just means connect. Share a little more of your inner world, not just the outer logic, because the most articulate people aren't the ones who use the fanciest language. They're the ones who make you feel something. Let me say that again. Articulate isn't cold. It's not a performance. It's honest, emotional communication. When you start speaking that way, you'll notice something wild. People start opening up back. Conversations get deeper, moments become memorable, and you start realizing that your voice isn't just a tool, it's a bridge. In the next chapter, we'll talk about mastering the moment, how to think clearly under pressure and speak your truth even when your heart's racing. This is where the real transformation begins. You ready? Chapter 5. Calm in the Chaos. Let's talk about the moment that tests all your progress, the pressure moment. You know the one. Someone calls on you unexpectedly in a meeting. You're on a first date, and the silence hits. Or worse, you're asked to explain something you care about, and suddenly your chest tightens, your brain fogs, and your words get tangled. It's like your mouth is trying to catch up to your panic. Here's the truth. Articulation under pressure isn't a gift. It's a skill. And the key isn't trying to eliminate the stress. It's learning to breathe through it. Because adrenaline is going to show up. It's part of being human. But if you can stay centered while your body freaks out, you become unstoppable. Ever notice how athletes or performers take deep breaths before big moments? That's not just drama, it's biology. Breath calms your nervous system. So before you speak, even if it's just a second, pause. Take a slow breath. Feel your feet on the ground. That tiny moment grounds your mind and makes your words clearer. Here's another trick. Zoom out. Remind yourself, this isn't life or death. You're not on trial. You're just speaking. And if your sentence comes out weird, you can clarify. If you forget something, you can circle back. Most people won't even notice because they're too busy thinking about their own words. A big part of staying articulate under pressure is giving yourself permission to not be perfect. When you stop trying to sound flawless, you actually sound more confident. Think about your favorite podcast hosts or YouTubers. They fumble, they laugh at themselves, they flow. That flow state, it comes from ease, not pressure. And if you're ever caught completely off guard, here's a lifeline. Reflect before you respond. Instead of panicking for the right answer, say something like, "That's a good question. I've never thought about it that way," or, let me think about that for a second." These phrases buy you time and show that you're thoughtful. They make you sound human, not robotic. The goal isn't to avoid pressure, it's to move through it with grace. When you learn how to calm your mind, your words become clearer, not because you're forcing them, but because you're finally letting them flow. Chapter 6. Practice makes present. So maybe by now you're wondering, okay, I get the concepts, but how do I actually practice this in real life? Great question, because articulation isn't something you read about once and magically master. It's something you train, just like any muscle. Start small. Use daily moments as mini reps. Instead of texting your friend about something important, call them. Explain your thoughts out loud. If you're journaling, read your entries back to yourself. Record a voice memo explaining your day, not for anyone else, just for you. You're teaching your brain and mouth to sync. Want a real hack? Read something out loud every day. Anything. A news article, a tweet thread, a short story. Focuses on how the words sound, where you naturally pause, which phrases feel awkward. This sharpens your rhythm and gets your tongue used to forming clean, intentional sentences. And talk to yourself seriously. Articulate your thoughts in the shower, during a walk, while driving. Turn inner monologue into outer dialogue. Instead of silently stewing on your frustrations, say, "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now because I have too many things pulling my attention." Boom! Clear, direct, articulate. Another underrated practice? Active listening. Great speakers aren't just great at talking, they're amazing listeners. They pick up patterns, tones, and phrasing that they then reflect back. The more you absorb intentional, thoughtful language, the more it naturally shapes how you speak. And look, some days it'll click. Other days, you'll trip over your words and feel like you're back at square one. That's normal. Don't judge it, just keep going. Because the most articulate people aren't perfect. They're present. They show up. They keep speaking. They keep refining. Every awkward pause, every nervous laugh, every shaky sentence, it's part of the training. You're not failing. You're growing. And with every rep, you're turning your voice from something reactive into something responsive. Intentional. Clear. Chapter 7. Articulate in real life. Let's bring this into the real world, because being articulate isn't about sounding good in a vacuum. It's about connection. It's about how you show up in the conversations that matter. Think about your relationships. Ever had a moment where you wanted to say something meaningful, but the words didn't land the way you hoped? Maybe you tried to apologize, but it came out defensive, or you tried to explain your boundaries, but it sounded cold. That's where articulation becomes life-changing, because when you can speak your truth, clearly, calmly, confidently, you create trust. People feel safe with you. They know where you stand. They know what you need. And most of all, they feel seen. Articulation in relationships starts with intent. Ask yourself, what do I want this person to feel? Supported, understood, challenged? Then build your message from that place. Lead with honesty, not ego. Say things like, "I care about you, and I want to understand where you're coming from." Or, "This is hard for me to say, but it's important. And here's something that changes everything. Be okay with silence." After you speak, don't rush to fill the gap. Let your words land. Let the other person process. That space, it's where real connection happens. Being articulate in conversations isn't about being the loudest voice. It's about being the clearest. It's about offering your thoughts like a bridge, not a bulldozer. And the more you practice this, at work, at home, even in text messages, the more you'll realize this skill doesn't just make you a better speaker, it makes you a better human. In the next chapters, we'll dive into advanced tools like storytelling, metaphor, and how to speak with impact in digital spaces. But first, take a moment to reflect. You already have everything you need. Your voice is ready. Now, it's just about using it. Chapter 8. The secret weapon of articulate people. Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone told you a story that stuck? Not just the facts, not just the advice, but an actual story that made you lean in, hold your breath a little, and maybe even tear up or laugh out loud? That's the power of storytelling. And it just so happens to be one of the most potent tools in the toolbox of articulate people. Because here's the truth. Facts inform, but stories transform. You can give someone a list of data points, and sure, they might remember a few, but wrap those ideas inside a story. Suddenly, they feel something. They remember. They relate. Let's say you're trying to express your frustration at work. You could say, I feel undervalued and overwhelmed. That's fine, but now say this. Last week, I stayed up until 2 a.m. fixing a last-minute project. I walked into the office the next day with 2 hours of sleep, hoping someone would notice. No one did. They just dropped another task on my desk and walked away. Boom. That's not just a statement. It's an experience. Articulate people know how to drop these little stories into conversations. They don't monologue for 20 minutes. They frame what they're saying. They create a tiny scene with emotion, with stakes, with detail. And suddenly, they don't just sound smart, they sound real. Now, before you panic and think you need to be some Oscar-winning storyteller, take a breath. You don't need dramatic plot twists or perfectly crafted narratives. You just need moments, real ones, everyday ones. Your life is full of little stories. You just haven't been naming them that way. Like this at the time you stood up for yourself, the moment you finally said no, the conversation that changed how you saw someone. These aren't just memories, they're tools. Share them, shape them, and watch how your communication transforms from informative to impactful. Want to be more articulate? Don't just speak, paint. Let people see your words. Tell them a story, and they won't just hear you, they'll feel you. Chapter 9. Speak with precision, not perfection. Now, let's get real about something most people don't talk about, how often we fill our sentences with noise. You know what I mean. The ums, the likes, the you-knows, the long-winded detours that make your point feel buried under a pile of nervous word vomit. And hey, we all do it. Especially when we're trying to sound smart, or we're afraid of silence, or we're just stalling for time. But the thing is, if you want to be more articulate, you have to start respecting clarity. Precision doesn't mean sounding stiff or robotic. It means cutting out the fluff so what you say actually lands. Think of your favorite speakers, your favorite writers, your favorite creators. They don't waste words. Every sentence earns its place. And that doesn't make them less human. It makes them magnetic. Let's break it down. Say you're in a conversation and someone asks you, what do you think about this project? You could say, I feel like maybe we could maybe look at the design again. Or you could say, I think the design needs another look. Something about it feels off. Both are human, but only one feels confident. The shift here isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Before you speak, pause for half a second. Ask yourself, what am I really trying to say? Then say just that. And here's a big one. Stop apologizing for having a voice. Stop over-explaining. You don't need a 3-paragraph disclaimer before you give your opinion. You don't have to soften every thought with, I might be wrong, but own your words. Not because they're always right, but because they matter. Now, if you're thinking, but I don't want to sound rude or blunt, good. That means you care. Precision isn't about cutting people off. It's about cutting through the noise. You can be direct and still be deeply kind. Practice this in everyday life. Reread your texts and emails before sending. Are there words you don't need? Say things out loud and ask, could I say that clearer? This isn't about obsessing. It's about refining. Your words are tools. Sharpen them, shape them. Use them with intention. When you do, you don't just sound articulate. You become someone people listen to. Chapter 10. Your voice, your power. Let's zoom all the way out for a second. Because everything we've talked about so far, clarity, confidence, storytelling, practice, it all adds up to something bigger than just sounding polished. This journey toward being more articulate, it's not just a communication upgrade, it's a personal revolution. Think about it. Every time you hold back what you really want to say, you shrink a little. Every time you let fear or fog steal your voice, a piece of you goes unheard. And that's not just frustrating, it's heartbreaking. Because your voice isn't just how you speak, it's who you are. To be articulate is to honor yourself. It's to show up in conversations, not just as a participant, but as a presence. It's saying, I have thoughts that deserve to be heard. I have feelings that deserve space. I'm not here to perform. I'm here to connect. And connection is the point of all of this. That moment where someone hears you and says, wow, I've felt that too. Or when you speak up in a meeting and the energy in the room shifts. Or when you finally explain your needs in a relationship and it brings healing instead of distance. This isn't just about getting your grammar right or eliminating filler words. It's about building alignment between your thoughts and your voice. So that when you speak, people don't just hear you, they believe you. And the best part, you don't have to change who you are to be more articulate. You don't need to be louder or more dramatic or suddenly extroverted. You just need to be clearer, more honest, more you. So when you sit across from someone and your heart starts to race, when your mind floods with too many thoughts, when your tongue tightens and your brain blanks, take a breath. Remind yourself, I am safe. I am clear. I know what I want to say. I trust myself, because that's the final secret. Articulate people aren't born with golden voices. They've just learned to trust their own. You have that same power. It's been there this whole time, waiting. All you have to do now is use it. Chapter 11, Articulate in the Wild. All right, we've talked mindset, we've talked tools, we've talked presence, but now comes the real world test. Because being articulate isn't just something you practice in front of the mirror. It's what shows up when you're under pressure, when you're in the middle of a Zoom meeting and your manager suddenly asks for your opinion, or you're on a date and your brain goes blank halfway through a sentence. That's the battlefield. That's where everything you've learned gets stress tested. So let's walk into that moment together. Imagine you're walking into a job interview. You've prepped, you've rehearsed answers, but your hands are a little sweaty. Your voice trembles slightly. That fear of being misunderstood, of rambling, freezing, or sounding unqualified. It's very real, and it hits hard, but this time you pause, you breathe, you remind yourself, they invited me in for a reason. I don't have to be perfect, I just have to be present. That shift, that's the difference. You stop performing and start connecting. You speak like a person, not a script. You don't rush through your ideas, you guide them like a calm hand on the wheel, and even if your voice wobbles, your words carry weight, because they're yours. Or maybe it's a heated conversation with someone you love. It's emotional, it's vulnerable, and it would be so easy to lash out or shut down. But you hold your center. You say, this is hard to say, but I need you to hear it. That is articulation. Not perfection, courage. Being articulate doesn't mean never fumbling. It means learning to keep going through the fumble. It means staying with yourself when the words don't come out perfect the first time. And when they finally land, they don't just fill space, they mean something. Because in the end, being articulate isn't about sounding good. It's about showing up, fully, authentically, audibly, in your truth, in your tone, in your power. And that's not just a communication skill. That's a life skill, one that changes how you show up in relationships, in opportunities, in leadership, and in love. One that lets you step into any room, look someone in the eye and say, this is who I am, and I'm not afraid to be heard. Conclusion. Let's end where we began, with that one moment, the one where you feel invisible in a room full of people, where you walk away from a conversation thinking, why didn't I say what I really meant? Why did I freeze? Why do I keep playing small when I know there's more inside me? If you've ever felt that, you're not alone. We've all had those moments. But here's the difference. Now you know that being articulate isn't some elite skill reserved for public speakers or TED Talk stars. It's something you build, one sentence, one pause, one honest conversation at a time. And when you choose to speak with clarity, when you choose to tell your story, when you choose to stop hiding behind filler words and fear, you don't just change how others hear you, you change how you hear yourself. You start to believe, I can say what I mean, I can ask for what I need, I can move people with my words, I can be fully seen. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Start now, in your next conversation, in your next message, in your next mirror talk. Because the most articulate version of you, they're not some future upgrade. They're already here, waiting for you to let them speak. If this resonated with you, don't let it end here. Check out the next video, How to Think Before You Speak Without Overthinking Everything. You'll find practical tips, real-life strategies, and even more mindset shifts to take your communication to the next level. Thanks for listening. Now go say something that matters.